Hello and welcome to the Gifts of Wisdom Summit, featuring conversations from the authors of the newly published Gifts of Wisdom, Practices for Healing and Empowerment by David D. McLeod, released last month. And it's an international bestseller on Amazon. Be sure to grab your copy on Amazon, and the link is below in the video. This incredible collection showcases 22 authors who each share their inspiring stories and powerful practices to empower and uplift. Today's conversation is titled The Connection Between Trauma, Grief, and Anger. And since writing her chapter, Sara has come to understand more about her own experiences and the feelings that they created within her. She never thought of herself as an angry person. She was, for many years, too busy being a people pleaser. But recently, the link between trauma and grief had been brought to her attention, and that she was holding anger way deep inside. In this program, we will explore those feelings, the whys and hows, plus understanding and loving yourself enough to acknowledge them and work through them. I'd like to turn it over now to my other brilliant co-author, Sue Ernst. So Sue, take it away.
Thank you, Janette. It is my absolute delight to introduce our featured author today, Sara Jane. Sara wrote Chapter 4, Finding Yourself After Trauma, Understanding Your Experiences, Embracing Their Gifts. Sara Jane is a Reiki Master and Teacher, creator of Vocal Reiki, founder of Gift of Healing TV, author and international speaker. She also channels messages from many mystical beings, including dragons, and speaks light language.
Awesome. So welcome, Sara Jane.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, sharing this space with my co-authors.
Awesome. So, Sara, what was the greatest gift or surprise during the Gift of Wisdom process?
I think it was actually the coming to understand that I was holding anger inside me, that the traumas I went through had actually made, anger was one of the feelings, and I hadn't registered that until the process of writing this chapter. When I was so young, I didn't know how to name the feelings that I was feeling. But of course, anyone would be angry if they felt they weren't being listened to and heard. They were feeling rejected and abandoned. So it started to sort of make so much sense to the monkey mind, if you like, the ego mind, which sometimes it would go off on one and it was just like, what's going on? And it's like, yes, it started to make sense to me. And now I can work with that.
Wow, that is a great surprise and such a healing part of this journey. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that piece, Sara. I am wondering, what are you most excited to share with your audience, share about to your audience today?
I think trauma happens to, well, all of us actually. Birth is considered to be a trauma. But it doesn't have to hold us back. People pleasing is known now to be a trauma response. But supporting people to realize that in the majority of cases, especially when it comes to abandonment and rejection, that they probably haven't been. There are circumstances surrounding it that you're unaware of or can't be explained to you at a really young age. I do this thing, I tone people's name, working with the sound, the voice. And I was giving a talk one day, and it was a small group, only about a dozen. And so I agreed to tone everybody's name. So powerful. I know the power this has. And one of the ladies, I always go out round and ask the name your mother called you as a child. And I got to this lady and she said, actually, I was adopted, but I know what my mother named me. And then, of course, she had an adoptive mother's name. And so I agreed to do both. I did the name from her adopted mother first. And then I did just a little of her birth mother. The floodgates opened. And the release of, I'm guessing, abandonment, sort of rejection, the trauma of feeling unwanted and unloved. And that's what this is about, is helping people realize that it may not be the way that the child understood it.
Wow.
Janette, I have to interject, having the fact that we have both read Sara's chapter. We know the trauma little Sara experienced, and yet we sit and hear you speak with such grace. It is just incredibly moving.
It certainly is. I got angel bumps when you were talking about it, Sara. And David commented he's got the feels right now. So we're all in this beautiful space of being in this healing energy. So, Sara, can you share a bit about your experience, about how you came to this understanding that you believe to be the link between trauma, grief, and anger?
Again, I think it goes back to the writing of the chapter, that I've always known my story, what happened to me. Obviously, when I was writing the chapter, I have no memory of it. I was less than a year old. The time in hospital, and so it's an element of guesswork and an understanding of how it must have been for a tiny child to go through what they went through. But I think there were things that also cropped up in sort of little posts that appeared on sort of the internet, etc., on social media, that sort of like hit a point, that it triggered something that helped bring me to realize that if you've got trauma, there is likely to be grief, especially again, as if it's with abandonment and rejection. And then yet that link then again to the anger. So, and grief isn't just about death, although actually I had that as well as a baby with a younger sister dying. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, a younger sister dying. I'm the eldest. The younger sister dying. So I did experience that, but I didn't understand that. The comment I put in the book was when Mum was putting the stuff in the cupboard and just got baby in cupboard, because where had she gone? Because actually of that 9 weeks, she'd spent half of that in hospital. So I experienced so much at such a young age, but without the ability to be able to give names to those feelings.
Right, right.
So I think, yeah, it's important that, and we can have misnamed those feelings as well. I think that's something else I sort of shared in the book. We can misname those feelings, and it is really important to allow ourselves to be able to reconsider what those feelings actually might mean.
Sara, I'm curious to ask you, from your own understanding, at what age do you believe we can feel grief and experience trauma?
Oh, correction. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to take it back. Preconception. Now, it might sound really, really strange, but with the work I've done learning a technique called metamorphic technique, which actually can sort of, it doesn't take people back to preconception, but it works with preconception. And as I've said to sort of people when I've sort of talked at fairs and events, is if your conception was a rape, think about the trauma and the grief the mother was going through and the embryo, everything that was going through her body sits within that child that then develops. So, you know, sort of, so how far can it go back? I think it can go back to actually preconception if there is a trauma involved at the time of that to the mother.
So the fact might be that you were mentioning you were only 1 year old at one point going through a very difficult time. Although you said you can't remember what happened, that's not saying you didn't feel it or experience it. So this is helping me to understand how, although we don't remember it, it's affected us in some way.
100%, because what I feel with the vocal Reiki that I've developed, which uses the sound, the toning, which is my voice, or it's channeled using my voice, is it gets to a deep cellular memory level. Just because we have no memory of it here doesn't mean there isn't memory held within our bodies. You know, and when you think that people talk about sort of the memories going back through generations, that some of us hold those, or most of us hold those, of traumas through generations. You know, some people work with past life regression, and that can be held within our bodies as well. So we aren't immune just because we don't have a memory of it.
Right.
It is held at a deep cellular memory level.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that explanation. Very helpful.
And Sarah, I'm going off script here. I was refreshing my memory, looking at your chapter again today, and I was just overcome by the sense that your poor parents, what they must have felt. You touched a little bit on it in your chapter, you know, to have this precious baby injured and to be taken away to hospital for 3 months, and then the carrying your sister and your sister's ill health and her passing away at 9 weeks old. So again, trauma, you know, vast trauma that affected you at that time through your parents. And, you know, one of your questions that you did provide was, you know, talking about this trauma is it always something major that happens, or can it be, you know, something that, you know, maybe in the moment doesn't seem so huge, but it completely changes your life? So can you speak to that a bit?
There's the major trauma. And then there are going to be things that, little things. As a child, I had a nickname, and that nickname was Pickle Puss. Yes. I don't even remember being called that. But there is also a term about being a pickle and being picklish, which is a little bit naughty. And I'm guessing, because I know it is a term my parents used, that I will have done something, especially as an insecure child, and they laughed. Oh, that is being picklish. As part of my nickname, that would have been, I've done something that's made them happy. And not understanding that I wasn't being told I was being me, I was being told I wasn't actually being that good. I'd do it again. And the tone of voice would change. And it would then become, stop being picklish, don't be such a pickle. Talk about mixed messages that are given to children. It's bad enough if we get them at adults, but we can hopefully get ourselves around those. A child, you know, up to what age, is not going to understand that. They really are. The mixed messages that can come from words and reactions. A message that felt really positive to a child to start with, that ended up. So when a child does something and the parents laugh, that is a message of happy. Then it changes, because actually what they did wasn't actually that good. It was just funny the first time.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, it can be little things. It could be an angry look when the child does something. So it doesn't have to be something huge. And that could be even the start of trauma for a child.
Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I think that's important, you know, that we've all had those anger, the look, all of those things that we might not have even dealt with. So thank you for sharing from your heart about this experience.
I have one other question along that line, Sarah. If we find ourselves being overly angry or constantly having anger-based thoughts, how would you suggest we could deal with that?
Well, there are a number of ways I think we can deal with that. And it's, how do we talk to our mind and encourage our mind to change its role? I view it this way, that our mind was, its most important job when we were born was to keep us safe. And so it yeah, it did. You know, we still put our hands on hot things and did silly things, and our mind then taught us that was not good. Don't do that. Keep you safe. But our mind can go into overdrive. I'm an adult now, for goodness sake. I've learned. You've taught me well. So forgive me, accountants, but I see the ego mind as being the accountant of our life, because the accountants are there to make sure you don't go spending the money, you don't do things that might not be good for the company, etc., etc. And change the role of your mind from the accountant of your life to the personal assistant to your heart. Therefore, its role becomes to help make your heart choices happen. Yes, there's still an element of keeping you safe within that, but that's one thing that I've done. And every now and again, I say to my mind, excuse me, the only one hurting me at the moment is you. Stop it. But then you can go into gratitude. Okay, right, I'm going to take my mind out of where it is. What am I grateful for? Or something that makes me happy. My youngest sister shared a thing called ants and cats. Now, don't ask me what ants and cats means, because they have got their acronyms, so they have got meanings. But she said, if you find yourself with angry thoughts, think of a kitten with a little ant, and the kitten batting the ant until such time as the ant, which was the negative thought, actually went away. So it's bringing a little humor into it. So, and I've no doubt many people can come up with ideas of ways you can sort of help the mind to let go of the anger thoughts that you're having. And they may not have anything to do with you or anybody you know, but you know, I'm a great daydreamer, so my head goes off.
Thank you. That's some great suggestions. That's terrific. Janette?
Well, thank you. So, Sarah, in closing, we'd like to thank you for you coming to share your gifts of wisdom in the book chapter and here in our conversation today. So I know you have a gift meditation. Can you tell us a little bit about that in closing? And the link is going to be placed in the recording here for the listeners.
In the chapter, I've sort of shared the link to a meditation to connect with your younger self, your inner child. I've kept it very simple with suggestions that you connect with a happy younger self to start with. Because it's, for me, what I've realized working with people is that sometimes if you can connect with a happy younger self first, they see you, they become aware of you in a meditation, and there's no judgment, there's no anger, there's no, you let me down. So there's a confidence already within the younger self that you're a friend. And then you can do that meditation again, and you can move forward and potentially support yourself to reconnect, not to revisit what happened. It's just be there for that younger self who was feeling those emotions that they may not have been able to even put a name to, as I've said. But it's just a meditation to do that. Now, I am actually going to throw a curveball in here, because this, I've just done a meditation that's about connecting with your younger child and helping them to let go of some of the anger. I will give you the link to that so that it's shared as well. That's just on the internet. It's up there already. It's there to be shared. It's there to be viewed. If there's something you're thinking you'd quite like to see, if there's a way you can release some of your anger, then, and from the child perspective, and from you, it's actually great fun to do. And within the meditation, I found us both laughing. So hopefully people will find the same, and I will provide that link so that you have that as well. So it's 2 meditations.
Well, thank you so much, Sara, for sharing your wisdom and for these wonderful gifts that you're giving for healing our inner child. So thank you so much. And Sue?
Sara Jane, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for taking the time to have this discussion with us. It makes having read your chapter even more special. I want to go back and read it again now, just hearing what you've shared. And I know you have shared a lot of gems this morning or this afternoon for some of us. Are there any other gems of wisdom that you would like to share in closing?
Be the love of your own life. It is so important to love yourself. And too many of us have never been taught that. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. You know, the women's roles were sort of very much being the, well, you know, sort of when I was a child, was the role was to be the housewife, you know, to be at home. And the last person you were ever allowed to think about was yourself. But the men, they also, it's right, you're meant to be the breadwinner, the provider, but where's the love for ourselves in all of that? Be the love, and that was that they were thoughts when I was working with a client. Be the love of your own life. When we care sufficiently for ourselves, we can bring so much more to others.
Thank you, Sara. It's a beautiful way to close today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sara.
My pleasure.